Terrorists hijacked a plane and attacked the White House. Anti-aircraft missiles on the roof of the White House were launched. 2 fighter jets were dispatched to intercept the plane of the terrorists. The gunner began to fire relentlessly at the White House, causing the White House to fall. Raging flames soared into the sky, and the White House collapsed. America's White House was known to be impregnable. Why, in just 13 minutes, could terrorists so easily bring it down? The story takes place on this day. The South Korean Prime Minister makes a surprise visit to the U.S. to hold talks with the American president about the North Korean issue, fearing that North Korea would declare war on South Korea. But just at this moment, an armed aircraft, an AC-130, suddenly appears circling in the sky over Washington. Because it's an unidentified aircraft, 2 fighter jets, F-22 Raptors, quickly approached to interrogate the aircraft. However, in the very next second, the gunship directly revealed its weapons. 2 6-barreled 12.7mm Gatling guns immediately began to fire wildly, with a firing rate of 3,600 rounds per minute. Immediately after the volley, 1 F-22 was destroyed. Instantly, the pilot of the remaining plane urgently deploys his ejection seat, but the fighter jet also crashed to the ground and exploded. After that, the plane quickly flew straight towards the White House. The security forces inside the White House had also received a report about the terrorist attack. Everyone immediately fell into a state of extreme panic and immediately took the president and the South Korean Prime Minister to take cover in the bunker beneath the White House. This place is 120 feet deep, about 36 meters, capable of withstanding the explosive force of millions of tons of artillery. And this is also a real facility. Its official name is the Presidential Emergency Operations Center. At the same time, Andrews Air Force Base, not far away, also dispatched another F-22 for support. All security forces on the ground were immediately on high alert, everyone ready their weapons to respond. The Stinger missile launcher on the roof was also aimed at the sky. The scene immediately descended into chaos. Curious civilians were still watching the plane, but the next second, a hail of bullets swept furiously and indiscriminately through the crowd. The Stinger missile immediately locked onto the enemy target. 2 missiles were quickly launched, but were immediately intercepted by the decoys equipped on the enemy plane. Under the relentless barrage of heavy cannons, the massive White House was nothing more than a sitting duck. The security forces on the roof were also quickly taken out, completely. The situation was extremely critical, and just then, an F-22 Raptor finally arrived. It locked onto the target without hesitation, and then an AMRAAM air-to-air missile shot out at 4 times the speed of sound. The violent explosion instantly destroyed the gunship. However, to make its demise more impactful, the aircraft turned around and crashed straight into the TUS Washington Monument before falling into a crowded park. The scene immediately turned into a living hell. This was truly a horrific terrorist attack. Immediately after, the U.S. president contacted the Pentagon, preparing to investigate the incident. But little did they know, the danger was far from over. Suddenly, a car outside the White House exploded, sending the curious crowd into a panic once again. But just at that moment, 2 men with Asian features approached the iron fence outside the White House. The powerful explosion tore a hole in the White House fence. Immediately after, terrorists who had blended into the crowd began to open fire on the security forces. 2 RPG rockets also instantly destroyed the 2 guardhouses on either side of the gate. Immediately, the terrorists swarmed in. Each one was basically carrying an HK-416 assault rifle, quickly mowing down the security personnel on guard. Meanwhile, the security forces were mainly using semi-automatic pistols, so they were completely outmatched. Under the enemy's hail of bullets, the security guards at the gate fell one by one. The White House crisis was escalating, and the situation was critical. After learning of the situation, the Pentagon immediately dispatched Delta Force to surround and eliminate them, but it would take them another 15 minutes to arrive. What was even more desperate was the unexpected twist. Among the high-ranking South Korean officials hiding in the bunker, there were hidden terrorists. With a sudden burst of gunfire, the president was quickly taken hostage, and the other high-ranking officials suffered heavy casualties. And at that very moment, the terrorists on the surface drove 2 trucks up to the front gate. They intentionally shot out their own tires and then hit the deck. Immediately after, 2 multi-purpose machine guns, M240 Bravos, opened fire at full capacity towards the White House gate with a rate of fire of 600 rounds per minute. Under the fierce attack, the security forces at the gate immediately suffered heavy casualties. And at this moment, another RPG accurately hit the main gate. By now, all the guards at the gate had been killed in action, leaving only security officer Mike as the sole survivor. He hastily escaped into the building. As the terrorists also stormed in, they shot each body again to confirm the kill, making it completely impossible to play dead. Therefore, this is also the reason why you can't play dead on the battlefield. Afterwards, in the second floor hallway, the last remaining guards and the terrorists engaged in another direct firefight. One security officer held an Uzi submachine gun, firing at a rate of 600 rounds per minute. However, a submachine gun's ammunition is limited. The largest magazine holds only 40 rounds at most. The ammo was quickly depleted. Immediately after, under the enemy's barrage of stun grenades, 2 security officers were blinded and fell, losing their ability to fight back. Next, the last few security officers guarding the surveillance room, still holding their HK-MP5S, wanted to make a desperate last stand. But the next second, amidst a hail of bullets that swept through furiously, the White House had now completely fallen. All the guards had been sacrificed. They had captured the White House. Meanwhile, the Delta team was outside the White House, finally arrived at the scene. They immediately took action, preparing for a rescue. Snipers on the rooftops also raised their rifles. SR-25 snipers tightly surrounded the White House. However, just as they were about to launch a full-scale assault, the Pentagon suddenly received a call from the bunker of the White House. The terrorists immediately demanded that the U.S. military withdraw from the White House. Under threat, the Pentagon had no choice but to order a retreat and establish a level 4 security perimeter. At this point, the situation was completely in the terrorists' hands. The Stars and Stripes of the White House was also brutally thrown down. This was a disaster for America and a moment of celebration for the terrorists. But in this moment of utter despair, a security agent, Mike, had luckily survived. He hid throughout the floors, searching carefully. He quickly made his way to the surveillance room. Shortly after, Mike used a combat knife to quickly take down an enemy. Then, he immediately shut down the White House's surveillance system, preparing to find an opportunity to launch a rescue operation and contact the outside. So Mike snuck into the president's office. Next, he used a code to retrieve the satellite phone and successfully contacted the Pentagon. After both sides confirmed their identities, Mike immediately reported the situation inside the White House and learned that the president was still in the bunker. But the president's young son is hiding somewhere. So, what needs to be done now is to find the president's son at all costs. He absolutely cannot be captured by the terrorists. Mike immediately springs into action. But just then, the terrorists contact the Pentagon. They boldly make their demands, demanding the U.S. withdraw its 28,500 soldiers stationed in South Korea, and the 7th Fleet stationed in Japan must also be withdrawn. Otherwise, they will kill the president immediately. The Pentagon is thrown into a panic because once the troops are withdrawn, South Korea could very well be occupied by North Korea within 72 hours. But if they do nothing, the president and other high-ranking officials will also lose their lives. For a moment, no one knows what to do. The acting president is deep in thought. Then, he immediately orders a change to the nuclear codes and prepares to contact the North Korean leadership to ask if they know anything about this attack. However, what's completely unexpected is that what the terrorists want isn't the nuclear codes. The ringleader then grabs the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and stabs him in the neck with a dagger, forcing him to reveal the Ceberus code. The Ceberus code is a top secret of the U.S. military, also held by the President and the Secretary of Defense, and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff held 3 different parts of the code. If it was successfully activated, the entire U.S. nuclear arsenal would self-destruct. The consequences would be unimaginable. Faced with the terrorist threat, the President couldn't bear to see the general killed, so he gave up the code to plead for the man's life. Immediately, the Pentagon received the information. Everyone fell into despair, in utter disbelief. To prevent all 3 codes from being compromised, the Pentagon urgently contacted Mike, tasking him with rescuing the president's son by any means necessary, immediately. If not, the terrorists would certainly use this to threaten them. So Mike immediately sprang into action, heading to the bedroom in the Lincoln office, because there was a secret White House passage here, built by President Truman, when he rebuilt the White House in 1950. Normally, it was used for staff to move around, but in a crisis, it could also be used as a hiding place. Mike immediately began a careful search. And sure enough, it wasn't long before he found the boy hiding in a corner of the wall. Right after that, Mike called the Pentagon to report the news, telling the guards at the tunnel exit to be ready to receive them. But just at that moment, the terrorists arrived in the room. After a brief search, they pointed their guns at the wall. And Mike also noticed something was wrong. Thanks to his agile movement skills, he quickly grabbed the boy and made a run for it, and quickly reached a ventilation duct opening. He told the boy to crawl out of the White House through this passage, but just as he got in, a terrorist entered the room. Seeing the vent's iron grate had been removed, the enemy immediately stuck his head in to investigate. In this critical moment, Mike, who was hiding in the shadows, sprang into action, directly using a chokehold to take down the opponent. The chokehold is also known as a finishing move. It only takes one move to take down an enemy. Once it's successfully locked in, even if the opponent is Mike Tyson, he would have to tap out. Not long after, met by the forces on the perimeter, the rescue team successfully reached the ventilation duct and safely rescued the boy. The Pentagon erupted in cheers. This was considered the first piece of good news since the incident began. Therefore, the next question was whether the president could be saved. Next, let's watch the mission to rescue the president unfold. After that, Mike continued to move stealthily and ambushed two enemies at a stairwell corner. Next, he forced them to reveal the leader's location, but the terrorist was completely unafraid, even sneering, in the face of the provocation. Mike kills one of them without hesitation, then forces the other to give up the information. Faced with the brutal Mike, the enemy quickly spills everything. It turns out the mastermind of this terrorist attack is the leader of the North Korean Renaissance Organization, a North Korean, the ringleader Kang Yonsak, who is also the world's #1 most wanted terrorist. As a child, while crossing the North Korean border, his mother was killed by a landmine, and his father was executed by North Korea. Therefore, this terrorist attack is also a blatant act of revenge. Meanwhile, the terrorists grabbed the Secretary of Defense, forcing her to reveal the code. Under a barrage of punches from the enemy, the secretary is quickly beaten to within an inch of her life. Her life is in grave danger. Finally, the president steps forward. After entering the code, the second defense barrier of Ceberus is breached. Now only the final line of defense remains. Can the president hold out? At this point, the Pentagon is in complete chaos. Fearing that Ceberus will be successfully decrypted, they immediately dispatch an elite assault team, riding in 6 helicopters, defensively armed MH-60L Blackhawks flying straight for the White House roof. Notably, this aircraft was different from the UA-60 Blackhawk, the standard model, because it sacrificed its troop transport capability in exchange for offensive firepower, which was far more powerful. However, every move made by the US military was already being monitored by a drone, the enemy's Black Crow, which was watching them closely. The terrorists immediately counterattacked as a 6-barreled Hydra anti-aircraft cannon slowly rose from the roof of the White House. At that moment, Mike rushed to the scene. Seeing the situation, he immediately tried to stop it. However, it was too late. As soon as the helicopters entered the airspace, a sudden, dense barrage from the anti-aircraft gun rained down furiously upon them. Under the intense suppressive fire, the Black Hawk helicopters were shot down one by one. In the critical moment, Mike managed to get to the roof and grab an RPG, then took out the cannon with a single shot. The US military's rescue mission had completely failed. News outlets worldwide were also broadcasting the catastrophic attack on America. Just then, the terrorists called again. They executed an official on the spot, a high-ranking one, and demanded that the US military withdraw its troops from South Korea within 1 hour, or they would kill all the remaining senior officials. Faced with the threat from the terrorists, the Pentagon had to concede and decided to withdraw its troops. But Mike knew full well the terrorists wouldn't stop there if they agreed to their conditions. They would only become more arrogant. In the end, Mike secured 30 minutes to mount a rescue. He immediately got up to find a way. However, to threaten the U.S. military and force them to quickly agree to the terms, at that moment, the terrorists brought the Secretary of Defense out to the gate again, then forced her to step outside the main gate, intending to execute her publicly in front of everyone. Just as they raised their guns, Mike counterattacked from his hiding spot. During the firefight between the two sides, the Secretary of Defense seized the opportunity to escape and was successfully rescued by the US troops on the perimeter. Meanwhile, Mike relied on his agile movement skills and his sharpshooting ability, hitting every shot to take down the pursuing terrorists. But at this point, news of the White House attack had spread across the globe. Tensions between South Korea and North Korea were at a breaking point, with war threatening to break out at any moment. Seeing that half an hour was up, the Pentagon had no other choice but to order the U.S. military to withdraw from South Korea. The 7th Fleet in the Pacific Ocean was also pulling back, and at the same time, as a condition for negotiation, a Black Hawk helicopter, an American UA-60, had also arrived at the White House perimeter, preparing to wait for the terrorists to withdraw before finding a way to capture them and rescue the president. Unexpectedly, it was all part of the terrorist plot. A major disaster was about to unfold. Just then, a group of hostages with black hoods over their heads walked out. A sniper with a Remington 700 PS rifle searched for the president among the hostages. But since everyone's head was covered, it was impossible to tell them apart. Therefore, the U.S. military could only watch helplessly as the plane flew away, planning to continue tracking it via its locator. However, the next second, accompanied by a massive explosion, the plane that had just departed immediately crashed. Everyone on board was killed. At this point, the Pentagon fell into despair, believing the president was dead. This was precisely the plot that terrorists had planned. However, Mike, who witnessed everything, felt something was wrong. He guessed that the terrorist leader was definitely still hiding in the bunker, and the president was surely still being threatened by him, just waiting to use the chaos as a chance to escape. Just as he predicted, the mastermind was still decrypting the Ceberus code. It seemed he really wanted to blow up America. With the hacker's continuous decryption, the Ceberus code was unexpectedly successfully decrypted. The terrorist immediately activated the program, and about 3,800 of America's nuclear warheads will detonate simultaneously within 5 minutes. Remember that Japan was only hit with 2 bombs back then, and it was turned into a living hell. So if nearly 4,000 American bombs detonate, the consequences would be truly unimaginable. At this moment, the Pentagon receives the update, and anguish is visible in the eyes of all the high-ranking officials. It's too late to stop it now. Perhaps God wants to destroy America. Immediately after, the terrorist blows up the bunker and prepares to escape with the president. However, if all the nuclear warheads actually detonate, with only 5 minutes left, where could they possibly run? Just then, the killing machine Mike finally arrives in the nick of time. The two sides immediately break into a brawl. But the president, during the struggle over a .229 pistol with the terrorist leader, is unfortunately shot by his opponent. In the critical moment, Mike successfully takes down the enemy and rushes to save the president. Although he is exhausted, protecting the president is his instinct, the sole mission of a personal bodyguard. So Mike uses all his strength to break free, then locks the terrorist in a tight chokehold and quickly finishes him off with a dagger in a single strike. At this moment, the president was barely alive, and Ceberus had only 1 minute left before detonation. Mike urgently rushed to contact the Pentagon and immediately asked for the deactivation code. Finally, in the last 3 seconds, Mike successfully saved the entire planet, preventing a world-ending catastrophe. And Mike also got the president out of the hell that was the White House, which was filled with bones and corpses. It has to be said that Mike is truly a Superman. He is truly a modern-day Captain America. Olympus Has Fallen is not just a simple thrilling action movie, but also a cinematic statement full of warning about the fragility of supreme power. The film pushed political tension and violent action to its absolute peak, pulling the audience into a battle for survival, with no room for mercy. What's most remarkable is how director Antoine Fuqua shatters all defensive barriers so brutally in just 13 minutes, turning the symbol of American power, the White House, into a hellish fortress under enemy control. The opening scene with the attack by an AC-130 and the horrific last stand established a relentless and nonstop pace, makes the audience feel suffocated and hopeless. The film's depth lies not only in the spectacular explosion scenes, but also in the core character contrast between the passive government leadership in disarray inside the bunker and the lone action hero. Mike, portrayed by Gerard Butler, represents raw loyalty and pure survival instinct. In a context where every system has collapsed, he is the last bodyguard, unbound by diplomatic protocols or flawed orders to retreat, becoming the sole fighting spirit against the terrible Ceberus plot. Thematically, the film touches upon the fear of the American collective after the events of September 11th, the fear of being attacked from within, of being betrayed by characters with seemingly harmless exteriors, and the truth that security technology, even the most advanced, can still be breached by a conspiracy that has been meticulously planned. The goal of the mastermind, Kang Yon-sak, is not just to personally destroy the president, but to destroy the will and self-defense capability of an entire superpower. By destroying its nuclear arsenal, an act of personal revenge escalated to a macro level. The value of a film lies in its reputation, while the value of a film review lies in the personal take. Our story for today ends here. Thank you for watching. What did you think of this movie? Let me know in the comments below.